Skyrim is full of mages. Healers, necromancers, court wizards, college dropouts, and at least one guy who's been alive for 200 years, and nobody seems to care. Today, I'm breaking down every single mage in Elder Scrolls V, and everything the game is hiding about them. Starting with the one you've definitely met but never actually thought about, Farengar, Secret Fire. This is the first mage most players ever interact with in Skyrim, and he sets a weird tone for the rest of them. Farengar is the court wizard of Dragon's Reach in Whiterun. You walk in fresh off surviving Helgen and a dragon attack, and this guy barely looks up from his desk. He's running what is essentially a private academic obsession out of the Jarl's palace. Cool, normal stuff for a government employee. He sends you to Bleak Falls Barrow to retrieve the Dragonstone, which kicks off a massive chunk of the main questline. So functionally, Farengar is your introduction to how magic operates in this world. But here's where it gets weird. Farengar is condescending to basically everyone who isn't a dragon scholar, including you, the person who just risked their life doing his errands. That's like your local librarian telling you you're too stupid to talk to, then asking you to fetch something from a crypt full of undead. And then there's the secrecy problem. Farengar has a mysterious contact, feeding him dragon intel. That contact turns out to be Delphine, a member of the Blades operating in secret. The game never has Farengar explain how he established this connection. Some players think he's completely in the dark. Others believe he knows exactly who she is, which would mean Whiterun's court wizard is deliberately hiding intelligence contacts from the Jarl. Either way, Whiterun handed its magical advisory role to a man who's arrogant, secretive, and potentially running back-channel contacts with a covert paramilitary organization. But at least Farengar keeps to himself. The next mage on this list had an entire college to ruin. Savos Aran, the archmage of the College of Winterhold, is supposed to be the most powerful mage in Skyrim, the top of the food chain, the guy everyone else in the building looks up to. And technically, Savos Aran holds that title. He's a dark elf with knowledge spanning multiple schools of magic. He runs the only formal magical institution left in the province, and he carries himself with the quiet authority you'd expect from someone in that position. But here's the thing. Savos Aran is haunted by a decision that defined his entire life. Years before you ever set foot in the college, Savos led an expedition into Labyrinthian with a group of fellow apprentices. It went horribly wrong. Everyone died except him, and the only way he survived was by trapping two of his friends as spectral guardians to contain the dragon priest Moriki. He just left them there for decades. Then he walked back to the college, climbed the ranks, and never told a single soul what happened, which is, not ideal. And the tragic irony doesn't stop there. During the staff of Magnus' questline, Savos is killed by Encano, the Thalmor advisor he allowed to operate freely inside his own institution. The player eventually inherits his position, his quarters, basically everything. Yet you go from new student to archmage in what feels like a long weekend. The community has argued about this for over a decade. Was Savos actually competent, or was the college already falling apart under him? Some players think he was carrying impossible guilt and doing his best with a broken institution. Others think he was a weak leader who let everything crumble while burying the darkest secret in Labyrinthian's depths. Either way, Savos Aran is proof that having the biggest title doesn't mean you're the strongest person in the room, but at least Savos had the title. His second-in-command had all the responsibility with zero of the recognition. Mirabelle Irvine. Every single person at the College of Winterhold just kind of accepts that a random adventurer walked in off the street and started speedrunning the entire academic hierarchy. Every single person except Mirabelle Irvine. She's the master wizard of the college, which is basically the operational manager. Savos Aran gets the fancy title, Mirabelle gets the actual work. She handles admissions, scheduling, and making sure the building doesn't collapse any further into the sea of ghosts. And when you show up at the front gate knowing exactly one spell, she's the one who lets you in, which, to her credit, she seems immediately conflicted about. Here's the thing. Mirabelle is a restoration specialist who has clearly spent years climbing the college's ranks through actual study and dedication. So when some Dragonborn wanders in and starts getting handed responsibilities that took her decades to earn, she notices. Her dialogue makes it clear she thinks your rapid advancement is unusual. She's not rude about it. She's professional. But there's this undercurrent of something is very wrong here and nobody else seems to care. And honestly, she's completely right. You literally become archmage after completing maybe 5 tasks. That's not a promotion, that's a workplace violation, but here's where it gets dark. Mirabelle doesn't survive the college questline. She dies during the events surrounding the Eye of Magnus, making her one of the few faction NPCs whose death is baked into the story, rather than being a player choice. The one person asking reasonable questions about your meteoric rise gets removed from the equation entirely, which is, not ideal for anyone who wanted accountability in magical academia. She deserved better, but at least she took her job seriously, which is more than we can say for a certain Khajiit student who treats the college like his personal testing ground. J'zargo. Every faction in every RPG has that one guy who thinks he's the best person in the room at all times. At the College of Winterhold, that's J'zargo. And the annoying part is he might actually be right. J'zargo is a Khajiit destruction mage and one of the first students you meet when you join the college. He's already more combat ready than half the faculty, but what really sets him apart isn't his spell list, it's his mouth. This cat walks around the college like he personally invented magic. Every conversation is dripping with confidence that borders on delusion, except he consistently backs it up. His personal quest is a perfect example. J'zargo approaches you with experimental flame cloak scrolls he's been working on, designed to be tested on undead. He hands them over and acts like he's doing you a massive favor. J'zargo has made these especially for you. You should feel honored. Here's the thing. The scrolls explode, not just on the undead, on you. They deal fire damage to everything in the area, including the person using them. J'zargo essentially handed you a bag of magical grenades with a defective pin and said good luck. And he knew. The community has debated for years whether this quest is charmingly reckless or genuinely exploitative. And honestly, it's both. But once you survive his little science project, J'zargo becomes one of the most reliable followers in the entire game. He uses destruction magic aggressively, he has no level cap, and he just keeps scaling with you indefinitely. His arrogance never fades, but neither does his loyalty. He'll talk trash about his own abilities being superior while literally saving your life in a Draugr tomb. That contrast between ego and dedication is exactly why he's a fan favorite. He's not humble, he just shows up and performs, which is more than most followers in Skyrim can say. J'zargo isn't the only college student with a habit of using the Dragonborn as a test dummy. Brelina Marion takes that concept in a very different direction. Brelina Marion is the College of Winterhold student who looks you dead in the eyes, asks if she can practice an experimental spell on you, and then proceeds to turn you green. Not metaphorically. Your entire character literally changes color, and that's just the first attempt. See, Andred's Brelina is a Dunmer mage who's still very much in the figuring things out phase of her magical education. She's got the ambition, she's got the theory, and she's got 0 successful test results, which is where you come in. Her quest, Brelina's practice, plays out exactly like every group project you've ever been forced into. She promises it'll be fine. It is not fine. She promises to fix it. She makes it worse. Your character cycles through visual distortions, gets turned into various animals, and experiences what can only be described as a full-body magical allergic reaction. At one point, you literally see the world through a green filter, like you're living inside a night vision camera from 2004. Here's the thing. This is one of the only times in the entire game where a student mage's experiment directly and visibly affects the Dragonborn. Not in a you lose 10 health way. In a you are now a different species and everyone can see it way, and after all of that, after she uses you as a magical crash test dummy and turns you into a walking menagerie, she becomes a marriage candidate. Hey, sorry I temporarily broke your entire physical form. Want to get married? And thousands of players said yes, because in combat, she's actually solid. She uses destruction spells like Frostbite and Sparks, defaults to Conjuration when she can, and fills the mage support role better than most followers. The community genuinely rates her as one of the stronger mage companions available, so she nearly ruins you, apologizes, and then becomes one of the most reliable partners in Skyrim. Worse foundations for a relationship exist, but Brelina isn't the only college student worth talking about. Her classmate Onmund has problems of his own, and they're a lot less funny. Onmund. Every group has the kid who looks like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. At the College of Winterhold, that's Onmund. He's a Nord studying magic, which in Skyrim is basically like being a vegan at a barbecue competition. Nords don't do magic. Nords hit things with axes and yell about honor. So Onmund showing up to magic school already puts him at odds with his entire culture, and you can tell it's eating him alive. He's quieter than J'zargo, less composed than Brelina, and radiates the energy of someone who got picked last for every team in his life. But here's the thing. He didn't choose to be there out of rebellion or to spite his family. He genuinely wants to study magic, even though his family completely disapproves. They think he's wasting his life, abandoning Nord traditions, and he carries that guilt around like a second backpack. His personal quest is where things get genuinely interesting. Onmund gave a family amulet to Enthir, one of the college's shadier members, in exchange for some magical supplies. Bad trade, worst decision. Now he wants it back. And Enthyr isn't exactly the giving type, so you have to negotiate with a guy who treats every interaction like a black market deal. You either persuade Enthyr or fetch him a staff from a dungeon, because apparently nothing at the College of Winterhold is ever simple. It's a small quest, but the emotional weight actually lands. That amulet is the last real connection Onmund has to a family that rejected him for following his own path. The community genuinely appreciates how much character it packs into a relatively short questline, which is more emotional consideration than most Skyrim fetch quests get in their entire runtime. After all that, he can become your follower. He's not exactly a powerhouse. His spell selection is decent, but not spectacular. And in combat, he's about as threatening as a strongly worded letter. But players love him anyway. He's the underdog, the vulnerable one, the kid the college should have been protecting instead of ignoring. But if you think Onmund's strained family ties make him complicated, wait until you meet someone who built her entire identity around forces she barely understands, Orania Eineth. Every mage we've talked about so far has one thing in common. They're all tied to the College of Winterhold in some way. Students, teachers, administrators. Orania Eineth doesn't care about any of that. She's standing on a frozen mountaintop south of Winterhold, alone, serving a Daedric prince. And she's been doing it longer than most of those college students have been alive. Orania is a Dunmer priestess of Azura, and she represents something completely different from the academic mages we've been covering. She's not studying magic from textbooks. She's channeling it directly from one of the most powerful beings in the Elder Scrolls universe. Her specialties are destruction and conjuration, which means she blasts and she summons, which is exactly what you'd expect from someone whose entire life revolves around serving a god. Here's the thing about Azura, though. She's considered one of the good Daedra in Dunmer culture. Not evil, not benevolent, just less likely to turn your skeleton inside out for fun. Orania genuinely believes she's doing holy work up there, and honestly, the game never really proves her wrong. Her questline involves recovering Azura's Star, a Daedric artifact that some mage named Malin Varen decided to corrupt because he was trying to achieve immortality by putting his own soul inside it. Once you deal with him, you end up with one of the best items in the entire game, a reusable soul gem, infinite enchanting fuel. Players have been using this thing to break the economy since 2011, and it never gets old. But the community loves debating whether using it makes you a monster. You're trapping souls in a gem over and over again. Azura says it's fine. The trapped souls might disagree. Orania doesn't seem to lose sleep over it, which is either admirable faith or willful ignorance, depending on who you ask. After completing her quest, she becomes a permanent follower, and a surprisingly capable one. But if Orania proves that divine magic can hold its own against academic training, the next mage on our list proves you don't need either. You just need a really good reason to kill your own mother. Ilia. Most followers in Skyrim ask you to fetch something, clear a dungeon, or prove you can swing a sword without falling over. Ilia asks you to kill her mother. That's the pitch. That's the recruitment questline. Help me commit matricide, and I'll follow you anywhere. You find her in Darklight Tower, a crumbling ruin crawling with witches and hag ravens. Ilia is a mage trapped in a nightmare she was born into. Her mother is in the process of becoming a hag raven, one of those twisted bird-crone abominations that used to be human before they willingly sacrificed their humanity for dark magic. And Ilia has been part of this coven, watching her mother prepare for a ritual that will destroy everything human about her. Here's where it gets complicated. Her mother chose this. Hagravens aren't victims. They undergo a ritual that strips away everything human about them in exchange for power. So when Ilia asks you to fight your way up the tower and stop the ritual by killing her mother, you're not saving an innocent woman. You're ending someone before they become a monster. But it's still her mother. The game doesn't let you forget that. The actual combat encounter is straightforward. You carve through the tower, reach the top, and end it. Ilia fights alongside you the whole way using her frost and lightning magic alongside some basic healing spells. She's not the strongest mage you'll ever recruit. Her magical skill ceiling is lower than someone like Jazargo or Marcurio, but that's not really the point. The point is that this woman asked a complete stranger to help her kill the only family she has left because freedom was worth that price, and you said yes. That's a heavier moral transaction than 90% of the quests in this game, and it happens in a tower most players walk right past. Ilia doesn't get talked about much in the community. She's not flashy. She's not powerful, and her tower isn't on any major quest route, but players who do find her almost universally remember the experience. Turns out, emotional weight hits harder than spell damage. But if you want a mage who skips the existential crisis entirely and just wants your gold, you'll love the next one. Marcurio. Every other mage on this list either joined the college, served a Daedric prince, or got tangled up in some ancient curse they couldn't handle. Marcurio walked into the Bee and Barb in Riften, sat down, and basically hung up a sign that says, "We'll shoot lightning for gold." gold. And honestly, that might be the most rational approach to magic in all of Skyrim. He's an Imperial Mage with a heavy lean toward destruction magic, particularly shock spells. And he's not shy about letting you know he studied at the Imperial City. For 500 gold, he's yours. That's it. No quest line. No moral dilemma, no fetching a cursed amulet from a Draugr-infested ruin first, just cold, hard septums. And suddenly, you've got a sarcastic mage following you around frying bandits. And sarcastic barely covers it. Mercurio has some of the sharpest dialogue of any follower in the game. He'll comment on dungeons, make snide remarks about your decisions, and generally carry himself like he's the smartest person in every room he enters. Which, to be fair, in most Riften establishments, he probably is. But here's the thing that makes him genuinely interesting. He starts out wearing basic mage robes, not heavy armor, not enchanted gear. He's a pure spellcaster who backs it up with attitude. Now, that's a deliberate choice by the developers, and it tells you everything about his philosophy. He's not some warrior dabbling in magic. He's a mage who decided that academia was boring and mercenary work paid better. Then there's his ego. Mercurio makes it clear he considers himself far too talented for the work he's doing. He studied at the Imperial City, he'll remind you, and he's not thrilled about crawling through Nordic crypts for pocket change. The gap between his self-image and his actual circumstances is either brilliant character writing or Bethesda creating an accidentally perfect portrait of an overqualified freelancer. Both are equally plausible. Either way, he's proof that not every mage in Skyrim needs a grand purpose. Sometimes magic is just a marketable skill, but if Mercurio represents magic stripped of all ideology, the next mage on our list is the exact opposite, a man desperately trying to atone for the dark magic he once embraced. Irandur. Irandur is the recovering addict of Skyrim's magical world, a Dunmer priest who spent years serving Vermina, one of the nastiest Daedric princes in the entire pantheon, the literal goddess of nightmares, and then just walked away. Decided he was done, packed his bags, found Mara, the goddess of love, and dedicated his life to atonement, which is, quite the career pivot. You find him in Dawnstar, where the entire town is suffering from shared nightmares so severe that nobody can sleep. Erendur knows exactly why. Nightcaller Temple, perched above the town, houses the Skull of Corruption, a Daedric artifact that feeds on dreams. And Erandur knows this because he used to work there. He was part of the cult that operated the place before everything went sideways. His questline, Waking Nightmare, forces him to walk back into that temple and confront every single thing he ran from. Former colleagues frozen in magical stasis, rituals he participated in, the full weight of what he was. And he does it anyway, because he genuinely believes atonement requires facing the thing you did, not just apologizing for it from a safe distance. Here's where the game tests you. At the very end, right as Erandur is about to destroy the Skull of Corruption, Vermina herself whispers in your ear, tells you to kill him, take the artifact, and the game lets you do it. You can murder a man mid-prayer, mid-redemption, for a staff that steals dreams. It's one of the most morally loaded decisions Bethesda ever put in a follower quest. Spare him, and he becomes a permanent follower who specializes in restoration and destruction magic. He heals you, he fights beside you, and he never stops trying to be better than what he was. The community genuinely argues about whether his reformation is real, or whether Vermina's hooks are still in him somewhere. Nobody has a definitive answer, but if Erendur's past with Daedric magic makes him complicated, wait until you meet the mage in Morthal who cures vampirism and refuses to explain how he learned. Falion. Every town in Skyrim has that one person nobody trusts. In Morthal, that person is Falion. And honestly, the townspeople are right to be suspicious. Falion is a Redguard conjuration specialist who somehow ended up in one of the most backwater swamp towns in all of Skyrim, which is already weird. You don't pack up decades of advanced magical training to go live next to a marsh unless you're running from something or hiding something. But what makes Falion genuinely unsettling isn't where he lives. It's what he knows. This guy is the only person in the entire base game who can reliably cure vampirism. You bring him a filled black soul gem, meet him at a specific location outside town at dawn, and he performs a ritual that strips the vampire curse clean off you. No College of Winterhold involvement, no divine intervention, no ancient artifact. Just Falion, standing in a marsh, casually undoing one of the most powerful curses in Elder Scrolls lore like it's a Tuesday afternoon, and the game never tells you how he learned to do this. Here's where it gets weird. If you wander around Morthal at night, Warrior, you can actually catch Falion sneaking out of town to perform rituals by himself. The townspeople notice this too. They gossip about it constantly. Yona at the inn will straight up tell you she doesn't trust him. Even the Jarl has concerns, but nobody confronts him. Nobody investigates. They just whisper and hope for the best. The deliberate vagueness is what makes Falion so fascinating. His expertise in conjuration and vampire curses is suspiciously specific. You don't just read about this stuff in a textbook. Some players theorize he was a vampire himself at some point. Others think he studied in Oblivion itself or had direct dealings with Daedric princes. The game gives you zero confirmation either way. Falion knows exactly what he knows, and he has zero interest in explaining why. So you're left in this perfect, uncomfortable position. You need him. He's literally the only cure. But trusting the guy who sneaks out at night to perform rituals in a swamp? That's a gamble. And speaking of vampires hiding in plain sight, the next mage makes Falion look like an open book. Sibyl Stentor. Most mages on this list are dangerous because of what they can do. Sibyl Stentor is dangerous because of where she is. She's the court wizard of Solitude, the Blue Palace, Skyrim's capital city. She advises Jarl Elisif the Fair on matters of magic, policy, and governance. She's embedded in the single most politically important building in the entire province. And she's a vampire. Not a reformed vampire. Not a struggling with her condition vampire. A fully operational, actively feeding vampire who has maintained deep cover in Skyrim's highest seat of power for an unknown period of time. Nobody in the court acknowledges it. Elisif seems oblivious. The guards don't act on it. The Thalmor representatives walking through those halls have zero apparent concern that the woman advising their puppet jarl is an undead predator with destruction and alteration magic at her fingertips. She's not some hedge wizard hiding her nature out of fear. She's a court wizard who has made herself indispensable. That's not a fantasy RPG character. That's a political thriller antagonist who wandered into the wrong game. Here's what makes Sibyl genuinely terrifying. She didn't hide in some cave or skulk around Morthal draining farmers. She chose the most visible, most protected, most influential position she could find. And she's been sitting in it comfortably for what could be decades, maybe longer. She actually mentions having been at court since before Elisif's husband Torrig was born, which gives you an idea of just how long she's been entrenched. The community has debated this one for years. Was she planted by a vampire faction to influence Solitude's politics from the inside? Or did she independently decide that being a court wizard was the perfect cover for an immortal predator who needs access to people and power? Honestly, the second option is scarier. A vampire with a plan is bad. A vampire with ambition and patience is a nightmare. And the worst part, you can walk right past her. Most players do. She's just standing there in the Blue Palace, offering court wizard services, looking completely normal. The most dangerous mage in Skyrim isn't the one throwing the biggest fireballs. It's the one nobody suspects. But if a vampire playing politics sounds intense, wait until you meet a mage who's been alive so long, he's forgotten how to care about anything except his own research. Neloth. Neloth is what happens when a mage lives long enough to stop caring about literally anyone else's opinion. He's been practicing magic for over 1,000 years, possibly much longer, and he wants you to know that every single second of that experience makes him better than you. He's a Telvanni wizard, which in Elder Scrolls terms means he comes from a tradition of dark elf mages who build giant mushroom towers, conduct horrifying experiments, and treat everyone around them like furniture. Neloth does all three. His tower, Tel Mithryn, sits on Solstheim like it wandered in from a completely different game, because it basically did. The Dragonborn DLC drops you onto this ash-covered island, and suddenly you're standing in front of a massive fungal structure talking to a guy who looks at you the way you'd look at a bug on your windshield. Here's the thing about Neloth that gives him actual franchise weight. He's not just some random powerful mage. He appeared in Morrowind, the original game, set around 200 years before Skyrim's events. The fact that he's still alive, still arrogant, and still conducting experiments in his mushroom tower means this guy has been insufferable across multiple eras of history. Most characters don't survive one game. Neloth survived 2 and came back meaner. His quests on Solstheim involve heartstones, experimental enchanting, rare component retrieval, and the general experience of being treated like an errand boy by someone who considers you barely sentient. He specializes in enchanting and is a master of various schools of magic, and he's genuinely good at all of it. The man has earned his arrogance. That's the frustrating part. The community is permanently split on him. Half the player base finds his pomposity genuinely hilarious. The other half wants to push him off his own tower. I am the greatest wizard in all of Tamriel. That's not a fan exaggeration. That's basically how he talks. Every conversation is him reminding you that your entire bloodline hasn't accomplished what he did before breakfast. Whether he's wise or just bitter is up for debate. But after 1,000+ years of being the smartest person in every room, the answer might be both. And speaking of Neloth's tower, there's someone inside it who deserves their own spotlight. Talvis Fathrian. Every powerful mage needs someone to yell at, and Talvas Fathrion drew the short straw. He's a young Dunmer conjuration apprentice stationed at Tel Mithrin on Solstheim, serving under Neloth, which is less of an apprenticeship and more of an unpaid internship that never ends. His boss is potentially centuries old, openly contemptuous of everyone around him, and shows zero signs of retiring, ever. Here's the thing about Talvas. He's not bad at magic. He's actually got genuine talent, particularly with conjuration, and he's been working on summoning Ash Guardians, which is ambitious for someone at his level. The problem is that his experiments keep going wrong, spectacularly wrong. The kind of wrong where the player has to step in and clean up the mess, because the Ash Guardian he summoned decided it didn't feel like being controlled anymore. You know, standard Tuesday on Solstheim. His quest is basically, hey, I messed up my summoning experiment and now there's a hostile Ash Guardian on the loose. Could you maybe handle that before Neloth finds out and makes my life even worse? Which is both funny and genuinely sad. This is a guy whose entire existence revolves around trying to impress a master who will never, under any circumstances, be impressed. Neloth treats him like furniture that occasionally talks back. Talvas, fetch this. Talvas, clean that. Talvas, stop summoning things that try to kill us. But what makes Talvas actually interesting is what he represents. The Telvanni wizard tradition is built on this exact dynamic. Powerful mages take apprentices not out of generosity, but because they need servants with enough magical aptitude to be useful. Talvas gets access to knowledge he couldn't find anywhere else. Neloth gets someone to run errands and absorb blame. It's exploitative by design, and the game doesn't pretend otherwise. The community genuinely feels for this guy. Players debate whether they should somehow free him from Neloth's service or accept that, as terrible as his working conditions are, he's still learning from one of the most powerful wizards alive. It's the classic toxic workplace dilemma. The job is destroying you, but the resume experience is irreplaceable. At least Talvas has the excuse of youth and naivety for his magical disasters. When the next mage on our list has decades of experience and still chose to point all that knowledge in the darkest direction possible. Festus KRX. Every faction in Skyrim has a mage, the college has its scholars, the Jarls have their court wizards, and the Dark Brotherhood has Festus Krex, an elderly Breton man who has spent the better part of his life using destruction magic to kill people for money, and he sleeps like a baby every single night. Festus is the Brotherhood's resident magical expert, lurking in the Dawnstar Sanctuary like a tenured professor who just happens to moonlight as a serial killer. He's old. He's cranky. He's surrounded by assassins half his age who rely on daggers and poison, and he thinks they're all amateurs. Ours because why would you sneak up behind someone with a knife when you could atomize them with a fireball from across the room? His logic is, frankly, hard to argue with. What makes Festus genuinely unsettling isn't his power, it's his attitude. Zero guilt, zero philosophical hand-wringing. He doesn't dress it up in academic language or pretend he's advancing the arcane arts. He kills people with magic. That's the job. He's good at it. Pass the bread. His matter-of-fact cynicism makes every other mage in Skyrim look like they're performing for an audience, because Festus stopped performing decades ago. He provides sharp commentary throughout the Brotherhood storyline, offering the kind of world-weary wisdom that only comes from someone who has incinerated more people than he can count. He's the old guard. No edgy backstory needed. Just a target and a paycheck. And then, the Brotherhood gets attacked. When you return to the sanctuary after the betrayal, you find Festus pinned to a tree by arrows, dead. The Brotherhood's most experienced mage, taken out not by some grand magical duel, but by mundane steel through his body. Which is, not ideal. But that's the thing about magic in Skyrim. It doesn't make you immortal. It doesn't make you wise. And it certainly doesn't make you good. From court wizards advising Jarls, to college students blowing up their classmates, to an old man pinned to a tree outside the ruins of an assassin's guild, every mage in this game proves the same point. Magic is just a tool. What matters is who's holding it. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every dragon priest in Skyrim explained and ranked, click the video on the screen now.